Hello and welcome to another episode of the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. I'm Philippa Haynes of Insight 101.
And I'm Mark Lee. On this podcast, we showcase and celebrate successful accountants who've been running their own practice for a good few years and whose stories can inspire and encourage other accountants in practice around the UK.
We ask them to share their stories, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned on the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. If you would like to share your story in a similar way, please do get in touch with Mark or myself.
Our podcast today is sponsored by Pinnacle, a trusted outsourcing partner with over 100 clients in the UK and Ireland. Pinnacle CEO Mayank Pandya is a chartered accountant based in London, and he has a passion to encourage innovation and excellence in the accounting profession. Pinnacle has offices in the UK and offshore delivery centres across India, employing over 250 high-quality staff. With a strong focus on quality assurance, Pinnacle has helped many UK accounting firms to scale their capacity and operations. To find out more, please visit www.pinnacleoss, that's Pinnacle, pinnacleoss.co.uk. You'll also find the link online wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Great, thanks Mark. So today on our podcast we are delighted to introduce Peter Watkins, who set up Blue Penguin Chartered Accountants in May 2015, almost 10 years ago. His practice is based in Taunton in Somerset, just down the road from me, and as we'll hear, Peter and his team are professionals who do not take themselves too seriously. This is immediately apparent from his LinkedIn headline, which reads, "Passionate about spaniels and tax returns," and the slogan on his website, "Choose Life."
Love it, love it. Welcome, Peter. Is there anything else you'd like to add by way of an introduction?
I think that sums it up nicely. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing around a few key questions. And I'll start with a combination, which is, what attracted you to start your own practice, and how did you go about doing that?
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, so for me, it was a perfect storm of two things that happened in my life. One's a bit dark, and we had two friends who died too young, and it made me realise that actually, what's the point in waiting for retirement, because you might never get there. So that's fine. And the other thing is, as you said, I've got my spaniels, and so in hunting season, we take them out. We do a lot of hunting, 2 or 3 days a week. Hunting season is the same as tax season. It runs November to January. So when I was working in the big accountancy firm, you could never get holiday then. And so I thought, do you know what? There's got to be a better way to do this. And I thought, let's see if we can find it.
So you found something else that was busy at the same time as tax returns?
No. I thought I'll set up a business where we don't have a tax season. We don't have everybody leaving it till Christmas, and then we can sort of spread the workload out over the year, and then you can be flexible enough to do the things you want to do. But there is an argument to say perhaps I should have given up dogs and taken golf, because that's my summer hobby.
So tell me, Peter, how did you get into accounting? Because I know that you were an optician at one point.
Oh, wow.
So I used to be an optician. Family had been in optics since, well, about 100 years actually, and so it's sort of in the blood. The profession was changing. I think I didn't like the way it was going. It's becoming a bit more commercialised, and there we go. And I was running an optical business on the side of my main job, and I really enjoyed doing the books for that. And so I thought, great, I'll train to be an accountant as a new profession. And I thought, I had this dream that I would be an accountant for opticians. But unfortunately, there's so few independent opticians now because of just the way the market is going, that there's not a lot of opportunity for accountants, because it's all centralised now. And so we do have some opticians, but we've sort of spread to healthcare, cosmetics, those sorts of things as well.
Yeah, great stuff. And I know that.
How did you get your first clients, Peter, enough to build up the practice?
Yeah, so my wife works at the hospital. We live very close to the hospital, and so she's got lots of friends who are doctors and so on and so on, and then of course they find out you're an accountant, and then those sort of questions start coming through. So credit to the wife for that one. And then I guess, yeah, a lot of it's just been all sort of word of mouth through there. And probably worth saying, I'm not the only accountant in the family. The other ones are much better than me, and they work in big four companies valuing oil for audit companies, big stuff. So when people say to them, "Oh, can you do my personal tax return?" they say, "No, but I know a guy." So I had some sort of referrals that way from sort of other accountants that deal with very different things.
Love it.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
So, I mean, the big four was not for you, essentially. I mean, obviously you had you had a life-changing kind of moment, and that's, not to be kind of, sniffed at. It's obviously fundamental. But do you think that maybe you would have fitted in other than that? Don't know. Knowing
Oh,
you, probably.
absolutely not. No, I'm speaking to sort of family who work up there. I think it's very regimented, and so long as you're happy to put in the hours and all that sort of thing. But there's no way I don't think you can have a quality of life and two dogs and that sort of thing. And hey, I mean, it's pros and cons because I live in Taunton and have done for 10 years. I know some people up at Big Four, and they've gone to the Cayman Islands for 2 years, or they've gone to Uganda for a couple of years. So neither's right or wrong, but that would not have fitted the lifestyle that I'm trying to build.
Yeah.
I
And
can relate to that. I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of the life choices and decisions. I know my son has quite a senior role within one of the big four, and post-pandemic only has to go into the office 2 or 3 times a week. They are allowing far more working from home and much greater flexibility than they did previously, and certainly than they did 20, 30 years ago. So the world is changing, but it's still not right for the likes of you and me, I don't think.
yeah. So what have you learned then along the way? And I mean, obviously, you've told us about one of those, which is, life is for living now. But, from a business perspective as well, what sort of things have you come across and learned?
So I would say there are the three main things, and one, yeah, is to look after yourself and put you first and your team first, which is the opposite of what you always see in a lot of marketing of
Yeah,
client first and everything. And that's great. And I've worked in firms where the client always comes first. They're on a par with God, and whatever they say, that they get. But I think to be sustainable, to not burn out, you've got to look after the people, you and the people who work in your business. They've got to come first, and then I think everything else kind of
absolutely.
happens. Because I think as well, if you do something for a client, so if they leave it a week before the deadline and you give your whole weekend up to doing their accounts, they're not going to appreciate that. They'll just assume that they can leave it to the week before the deadline, and I made that mistake, back along. So that's quite important. I think they say you get what you accept. So make sure you are happy with what you're taking on. I think specializing is quite a good thing to do. Call it niching, whatever. And it doesn't have to be, oh, we just deal with doctors or this, that, and the other. But I think just be clear about what you do, because you can't do everything. So, it could be that you work for any type of client, but only if they use a particular software, or only with a certain sort of turnover range, or only people who want these sorts of services from you. Um, and
100%.
and just be clear that what you, so for example, I have one farmer as a client, and it's a long story, and it was a favor for a friend, and every year I have to recap on all the changes to do with the specific taxes around that for that one client, and I can't charge him for that. But so just by having that one person, it's not a profitable job, I have to say. So focus on what you want to do, and then really onto the third item really is charging properly for your work. I was given this advice when I started, because I was asking people, and they said charge properly for your work, and I ignored that advice, and it was a disaster. I thought, well, they were paying me, say, £20 an hour when I was working for an accountancy firm. Well, I'll charge £20 an hour for my work directly, and we can all laugh about that now, but at the time I just didn't think I was worth more than that.
Yeah,
And then you sort of you end up, your clients think that's all you're worth as well, and it's a bit of a spiral. So weirdly, since we've started charging a lot more, and okay, that's been a gradual thing over time, I feel that we get a better quality of client and people value your time more, which sounds perverse, but yeah, I ignored that advice. So if anyone's listening to that now, you might ignore it anyway, but please don't.
Bill commercially from the off. I mean, it's less of an issue. This particular point I'm going to make, inspired by what you said, is less of an issue now in these days of home working. But many an accountant started up working at home and then wanted to move into an office, but found that their overheads were going up, but clients weren't going to get a different service just because they were no longer based at home. So either they charged the same and made less money, or they had to upset a lot of clients by saying, well, my costs have gone up, so you need to pay more. And the client goes, well, I'm not getting anything different. So always charge a commercial fee from the outset, wherever you're based, to reflect the costs that you might have in the future.
Well, do you know, you're right. And I did have a referral from someone who said, oh, so-and-so said to come to you because this was before we had an office, because you work from home, so you'll be a bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And I got a bit offended by that, really, because I thought, well, hang on a minute. Does that affect, as you say, does that affect the service you're offering?
Exactly.
And when I do get an office, are you happy to pay me more for the same service? So it's kind of, yeah, it doesn't, it's a bit of a fallacy we have, don't we, that working from home means that you are providing a lesser product.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also the fact that when you're helping clients from a financial perspective, some pricing advisors, say, look at your costs. That shouldn't really be, yes, you need to make enough money to cover your costs, but that shouldn't be the driving factor, should it?
So going back to the sort of niche question, and I sort of like the fact that you're sort of niching, but in a more sort of general way, or not too tightly. How did you manage to choose your niche? Because that's, that will be one of the questions that people ask you. And I mean, I've said that there are so many ways of skinning a cat, but I mean, what was your approach?
So I suppose there's two angles to this. In terms of the type of client and in sort of the way they run the business and so on, because I want to be flexible and I want to be able to go away for a couple of weeks and take my computer and still do the work and things. Our client base broadly will be people who do not have physical things. So shops, farms, with one exception, warehouses, retail, those sorts of things, where there are physical things where really you need to be going up and seeing the client to really give them a proper service. You need to see what's going on. Whereas I prefer to deal with people who are, and if I may say, like the people on this call, consultants, professionals, those sorts of things, where actually there's probably not a lot of physical extra value you can provide by turning up and having a look at your desk.
Yep.
And so that's really worked for me. And also because we live near the hospital, we get inquiries from healthcare people, and I just found I really liked working with those sorts of people. So I think sometimes your specialism will find you.
Yeah.
And so long as it's something you enjoy, that's great. And I think if you try and be all things to all people and say we specialize in SMEs, which I think you guys will know better than me is what 98% of the businesses in the country, well then that's just nothing. You want to be remembered for something.
Yeah, and I mean, before we move on, transparency here, you are my accountant, and I chose you not because you were in the location kind of close to me, but because I knew that when the phone went and I saw it was you on the phone, I wasn't thinking, oh no, I've got to talk to my accountant, because I think, you're pretty quirky, have got a good kind of sense of humour, and generally, what I try and say in all seriousness is like has to work with like, or like attracts like. So for me, it's somebody who's quite an independent spirit, who didn't really sort of, not too stuffy, or that for me was what attracted me. So there's obviously that sort of personality aspect as well.
And I won't name them now, but we've interviewed my accountant on the podcast as well, quite a long time ago.
That's right. Yeah. Keep it in the family.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, 20, coming up for 30 interviews now. We've gone way beyond those that we know personally.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's lovely to have you on at last, Peter. I think that point is really important. And interesting in what you said there, Philip, and I think a lesson for accountants listening is, I know Peter's very proud of the fact that he's a qualified chartered accountant, and not every accountant is a qualified chartered accountant, not every accountant is qualified. But you took, maybe from the conversations you had with him, but you largely took his qualifications, expertise, experience and ability for granted.
Yeah, it didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
And I know that will be, I can hear people groaning in the background, but
Yeah.
I think what's really important is knowing that you can communicate with somebody, knowing that they don't make you feel stupid, knowing that, you can talk about your finances and not be frightened. And also just, people by people, that's what we always say. And it sounds so obvious, but if you like and enjoy talking to somebody, you're going to like and enjoy working with them too, even when it's about finances.
I will say in doing this for 10 years, there's always debate, isn't there, of regulation of the profession and what have you. And there's pros and cons. I have only been asked by one client if I was a chartered accountant. Now, whether some people ask the question and answer it for themselves on the website, I don't know. But only once have I been asked that. So that probably is a reflection of where that comes on people's lists of what's important in finding an accountant. The letters
I think it's based on the knowledge as well. People don't necessarily understand the sector. And so even being able to ask that question would probably go way beyond their kind of understanding. So within the space, we all understand what the options are and the accreditations. But I think outside of that, we're about as clueless as everybody else. There aren't many people who understand about marketing and all the different things that you can take as a marketeer. So I mean, it's not just accounting, but
moving on as we should. And you already answered part of this to a degree, Peter. What other mistakes have you learned and what did you do to
Yeah, well, many mistakes, or ways to find not to do something, perhaps.
That's a good way.
So one thing for me was not investing in my business sooner, because I was so scared of not finding any more clients to pay for anything. And when I say investing, I mean in your processes and your systems, your software, and also in team. I think to start with, I was recording the work I'd done on some sort of spreadsheet and then trying to bill it from there, and because I wasn't going to pay for software for that, and it was ridiculous, really. I think you've got to build for what you want, not what you have now, because otherwise you'll do what I did, which is every couple of years find that the system you've got, you've outgrown it, and you've got to change. So if you can afford to do so, just start as you mean to go on. Yes, it's going to cost you a lot of money in the first couple of years, but clients will find you. And I couldn't believe this. How will people ever find? And they do somehow. So you've got to have faith in that. I think build for what you think you're gonna have. And the other big mistake that I made for a long time was not saying no.
Yes.
And not saying no more often, either to clients who aren't a good fit for you, or to clients who need something that you don't have the expertise to do. No one ever tells you in your accountancy training that it's okay to say no. They tell you if the client has a checkbook, you say yes. And actually, I was told
that's big firm mentality.
Yeah, and I won't name the firm that told me this, but I was told, look, say yes to anything the client wants, and we'll work out how to do it and deliver it later.
You sound like a magician. I'm a member of the Magic Circle. That's almost a mantra of magicians. When a client says, "Can you do an illusion?" or "Can you do this?" you should always say yes, and then go and ask your pals how to do it.
And up to a point,
less so in accountancy.
in a big firm, I suppose, where you've got all different offices and things to call on, then fine. But what I would say is, yeah, don't be afraid to say, look, this isn't a service that we offer, but have a great network of accountants. And I know, I don't know, probably 100 other accountants. And obviously, Mark, I think I spoke to you recently about finding a foreign accountant on your network.
Yeah.
Rather than fudge it and inevitably get it wrong, just know when to say, look, I can't do that, but can I put you in touch with this person? I think that's very useful. And the other thing is just trust your gut. You've got to having a meeting with a client, and there's something they just feel like trouble, especially if they're moaning about their previous accountant a lot. That's always a red flag. And just trust your gut, and don't be afraid to say no. You don't have to necessarily tell the truth. You can say, look, we're full, or I'll let you know when we got a waiting list or something. But I think trusting your gut, even when you want the extra work, is so important.
Yeah. 100% agree with you. And this business of saying no, one of the reasons we've been trained not to, even if not in a large firm, is because of the misquoting of the George Selfridge quote, the customer is always right. We've sort of all learned that, but actually the original quote is the customer is always right in matters of taste. In other words, when they're expressing a preference, the customer is right. But that doesn't mean that we should underplay or undersell our expertise and ability to give advice to clients that they might not want to hear. So totally agree with you. Say no when it's right.
Yeah, I can hear lots of other accountants say, nodding there, but it's not always that easy, is it? And I mean, we talk a lot about advisory and having a relationship with your kind of with your clients, and not all accountants can do that. So having the sort of presence of mind to have that conversation and kind of think about it, helicopter view, and think, are they right, are they wrong, oh no, I don't think you're right, it's not always that easy to do, is it? So it's one of those muscles, I think, that takes a little bit of, you've got to work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, thinking about unique, and I would say that you're very unique.
I'll be very unique.
Well,
Sorry.
unique. You can't, grammatically speaking, you can't be very unique, but
Sorry.
yeah. What do you think makes your practice unique then, or you, or?
It's a very good question, and I was thinking about this, and actually, I think it's a question that the business owner is probably not the best person to answer.
Yeah.
I think their customers, their competitors, their followers should be able to answer it. But what I would hope that they would say is two things. I think number one, our branding, and the way we sort of hold ourselves, I think, does make us a degree unique, or just very unique. We are ourselves, and I think in this world of everyone saying, oh, we're different, actually you forget to be yourself, because everybody is unique. So just be yourself. Don't try and be anything you're not, because if I tried to pretend I was this big corporate organization, and then the board of a client turns up and we're sitting around my kitchen table, it's not a great look. And on the same token, if I pretend that I've got a massive boardroom and directors and everything, then my ideal client will probably be scared off by that, even though it was all just a lie anyway. So I think the more you can be yourself, the more you just will you will stand out, and there'll be people who love you for that, and there'll be people who don't love you for that. But you don't want to work with the people who don't like you for you, because it's all about people.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. And the other thing that we have, and the way we work is on a profit share model internally. Okay, so everybody here gets a profit share of the client portfolio they look after. So when I was working in the larger firms, what would happen is you have a salary, and the partners will keep bringing you more and more clients until you say no or burn out. You certainly don't get any more money. And that didn't seem fair to me. And what it meant is the really good people would leave, and the really rubbish people would actually stay. So we have a system now internally where each person, we get a new client inquiry, and each of our team members, they will have a meeting with the client. They'll decide if this is a client that we want to work with. they'll deal with all the fees and everything, and also, frankly, determine if they want that extra work. So one of our team members, he works half time. He's very happy doing that. He doesn't really want any more clients at the moment, so we don't get him to do any of the meetings until he may say at some point, actually, I want to increase my hours. Great, we'll find you some more clients. And then everyone's got skin in the game.
Mm.
And we don't have to deal with sort of mandatory timesheets and billing and all this sort of thing, because everyone's in charge of their own billing, because if they don't, they won't get paid. So the
Love it.
long-term goal.
When you say everyone, how many of you are there operating like this,
So
Peter?
we are 3 at the moment, and we've got the 4th who's just started. And when someone starts for the first year, we do just pay them essentially a salary while they're building it up, because it's unfair to come in from nothing. But yeah, so there's sort of 3 client-facing people, and they're all on the website, and people can book in with any of them. The long-term plan is to try and become an employee ownership trust.
Awesome.
I think I need probably a team of about half a dozen to make that viable. But I don't want to be the person who is, in the big firm. Only the partner can do an engagement letter, or quote a client, or meet a client, or even speak to a client somehow. And what was really great the other day, a client phoned up. It was one of Mark's clients, my colleague, and he wasn't in, and they asked me, and they had no idea that it was essentially my firm. And that was fantastic,
Yeah.
because actually he had the relationship with that client. They got on really well. Luckily, they were saying that he's doing a really great job for them, and I just love this idea, and that's why I don't have my name above the door, because I don't want people to think that I'm somehow the best, because there's 3 of us, so there's only really a 1 in 3 chance that I've got the best answer.
I
Wow.
think that's awesome. What an awesome approach. I love that.
Yeah,
And
I
very
think
well.
it's so different, that is, and so refreshing. And it shows that there's kind of no ego, although, I mean, just to pull in your website and just to give listeners an idea of the sort of marketing you do, I mean, it's just the way that you write about things. I mean, you talk about you don't have a brag wall, or no, you've got a brag wall, which is essentially reviews and testimonials. But on your website, you talk about, we're not really into this, but it just shows that you are different. I think it's very easy to say, we're just ourselves, but actually, in reading your website, I think you are, very different. You feel very different. What's that all about?
That's a great question. I think it's just being yourself. I don't think you can be anyone other than yourself if you're trying to create stuff. But I suppose sometimes it's when you're looking at other things from other service providers. So if you're, I don't know, if you're looking at engaging a solicitor or something like that, and then I think to myself, well, what of these websites appeal to me? And most of them are the same with a different logo on, aren't they?
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And then I'll find something a little bit different. I think, I like this person. So I try not to be scared of, not necessarily offending people, but try not to be scared of posting something which some people will go, this does not interest me. Because I think if you try and appeal to everybody, you'll appeal to nobody.
Yeah.
And I think humour has a place in it. We're taught that, you can't be professional and funny. I think humour has a place in this, because it breaks down that barrier a little bit to,
Yeah.
actually this is this is a real person, and you can tell, can't you? Especially Philippa, I guess in your line of work, you can tell whether someone's a company has made a post which is from the heart, or whether it's done 3 rounds with their marketing team and 2 rounds with legal, and it just doesn't interest you at all.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly in your issue, I know that you have a brilliant copywriter as well who totally gets you. So if you're not writing it yourself, which I know you do a lot of, he, like all good copywriters, is able to kind of translate that, and bravo to him.
Yeah, do you know what? That's a really good point. For my posts and things, I do it because you need to get that content out quite quickly. But for the website and what have you, my copywriter is fantastic, and what he does is put on the page what I would say. But once I start writing things, it does just turn into sort of corporate gobbledygook, and I think that probably a lot of people do that. So I think there's certainly a value to getting someone to help with those things that are going to be there longer term, like the
Yeah.
website.
I think that's a good distinction as well. Sorry, Philippa.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Mark. Carry on.
No, I think it's an important distinction. And even for those of us who can write well, I've used copywriters in the past. I'm a bit too lazy and arrogant now, I suppose. I don't like to think of myself as arrogant, but I think I write sufficiently well for what I need to get across to the people I need to get it across to. But that's not true for everybody. It's certainly not true for lots of accountants who would benefit from an effective, good marketing copywriter who gets them and is not writing stuff that might appear from any other accountants.
Yeah, indeed. Well, do you know that we've got that final question of what else makes you unique or secrets to your success? You've talked a lot, and including about the way that the sort of profit share and that sort of thing. Is there anything specific before we sign off, Peter?
No, I think, that last question about sort of secrets to success. I think the first thing that's really important is define success, because that's really different. And there are some people who want to sit on a boat in Dubai and go first class, and that's great because that makes them happy. I just want to earn enough to pay the mortgage, keep the roof on, and be flexible with what I want to do with the rest of my life. And so I think that's really important. I think branding is very important. I think focusing on what you're good at and making sure you know what you're not good at and finding someone else can do it. Don't let clients dictate the terms. So if they turn up a week before the deadline and you've given them 900 reminders, well, I'm sorry, this isn't happening. It's your business. You make the rules.
Absolutely.
And if people want to play by those rules, they will be fantastic clients for you. And if they don't want to play by the rules, they should be a client for someone else.
Oh, that is, I think you're achieving the level of success you want when you are able to say that with confidence to clients and know that you mean it without your heart skipping a beat going, yeah, but the few £100 they pay, if that's what it is, would be still quite, a few £100 is still a few £100, but you have to have that. You have to build up to that level of self-confidence to be able to do that and run the practice according to your own rules. 100%.
Yeah, totally. Well, as always, we could talk for a long time. Certainly, I feel like we've just skimmed the surface, but we are at an end. So, Peter, please share your contact details so our listeners can get in touch if they'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably email's the best thing. It's peter@blue-penguin.co.uk, or for those of you who are on LinkedIn, if you're not already connected with me, you find me on there.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
Yeah, well, if they want to talk about brand story, or just find their ideal client, then I'm happy to talk, and you'll find me on LinkedIn. But also my website, www.insight101.co.uk. And Mark, how about how people can find you and your Soul Practice Club?
Lovely, thank you. Well, online everywhere. I'm Bookmark Lee. My website is Bookmark Lee. Bookmarks business cards. Who wants business cards these days? I tend to support accountants running their own practice, feeling isolated, frustrated, or overwhelmed. Some want one-to-one mentoring, and others appreciate the camaraderie and support from my Soul Practice Club. And the odd one or two actually want both.
Yeah, that's right. So before we go, an important thanks to our sponsor of this episode, Pinnacle Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO, Mayank, know you heard about Pinnacle Global on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. Whew, that's a long sentence. And if you've enjoyed, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or YouTube, and let us have your feedback too.
Absolutely. It all helps to broaden the potential reach of the podcast. And I know what you mean about that. So I used to struggle with getting all those words in one breath too. Do please contact Philippa or myself if you'd like to be interviewed on a future podcast. We're now booking into December. We're fully booked through to the end of November, amazingly. Or indeed, if there's anybody you'd like to recommend that we interview. Thanks again to Peter. Really appreciate you coming on today, and to my brilliant co-host, Philippa. Until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life. Goodbye for now.
Bye.